What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today we're looking at Leviticus 20 and 21, and we're also finishing the book of Matthew in the New Testament. So, to start off, in Leviticus chapter 20, God recommands something that he already commanded. So he said this before, but he's going to repeat it for some emphasis here. It's all about child sacrifice. Now, child sacrifice seems like a weird thing today that nobody would ever do, but just know that in the Old Testament, the people who lived in the land of Canaan, where the Israelites were about to go in, this is one of the ways that they worshiped their false gods. They would offer their children as sacrifices to these false gods, which was a horrible thing. And God says, I never want you to do it. So he makes it very clear here, and he recommands it, and he says, don't do it ever, because if you do that, you will be put to death. That's what he commands. Then he says, if anyone curses his father or mother, they'll be put to death too. And I just want you to see both of those things next to each other, because I don't think anybody today would ever put those things next to each other. They'd never put, same punishment should be for sacrificing your child to some pagan god and also cursing your father and mother. Those things are totally different, and one is way worse than the other. Well, that might be true, but just notice how God says their punishment should be the same, because God hates it when we disrespect our parents. And that's something you should take away, especially as a junior high student. You should say, God hates it whenever I disrespect from my parents. So I cannot do that, because here in the Old Testament, God had some serious punishments for doing that. That's something we should run away from as far as we can. Then he talks about some more of the sexual immorality that God doesn't want to take place in this community. Then he says, if you go into this land and you act like the people who lived there before, these Canaanites, who committed all these sexual immoralities, who sacrificed their children to Molech, the people who cursed their father and mother. If you live like that when you go into this new land, he says in verse 22, the land will vomit you out. It's going to throw you up in the land. You're going to be in there, and it's going to be terrible, and you're going to get thrown out of it. God says, you shall be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy. And I've separated you from the peoples that you should be mine. Now, that is a very, very specific command for these people. But I want you to know that command is actually repeated in the New Testament for Christians. In 1 Peter chapter 1, Peter says, you should be holy because God's holy. Be holy like God's holy, because now he's chosen you out of the world as a separate group of people, that you should be different from everybody else. Now, you're not living right now in the Israelite community at this time. So you're not different from the world in the sense that you belong to a different community, like a nation, but you, if you're a Christian, you do belong to a different community, in that you belong to the community of God, which we would call the church now. And what we see is God wants us as people in the church and as Christians, he wants us to be holy too, just as he is holy. So that's chapter 20. In chapter 21, we see the responsibilities of the priests, which I want you to notice something. It seems like for the priests, there's an extra level of responsibility they were supposed to have, even in the way that they acted and the people that they chose to marry and the punishments for their sin. It was higher. It was a heightened thing. And what I want you to see is I think there's a connection even today. To the people today who are spiritual leaders, God expects even more from them. There's commands for all Christians, but there's also some commands that just apply to the leaders in the church. And the same thing here for the priests. We should all aspire to be like, in the Old Testament, the priests. We should all aspire to live like them, but there will be some people that are held to a higher standard. And it's the same way today in the church. There are people that are held to a higher standard. So I thought that was interesting as we read this today. So moving to the New Testament, we're going to finish the New Testament book of Matthew. So first book of the New Testament, we're finishing it today. Matthew 28 is what we're looking at, and this is all about the resurrection. So Jesus has just died. It was super public. Now his resurrection, at least at the beginning, was sort of private, and it becomes public later on, because the first people that go and see Jesus is risen from the dead are these women that go and talk to him, and they go to try to anoint his body with these spices, and he's not there. So what do? They're not happy that he's not there. They're freaked out because someone comes and talks to them and says, yeah, he's not here because he's risen. He's gone. He's not here anymore. So that takes place here. And one of the things that he commands them after Jesus meets these women is go to go tell the disciples to go to Galilee, because that's where I'm going to meet him. And the most famous scene from this chapter comes at the end here, where it says the Great Commission is given. And remember, that's Jesus commanding the disciples to go and make more disciples. And that command is certainly one that we need to take seriously today. We need to be people who are making disciples just like these disciples were in the first century. They were told, hey, you got to go make disciples from the people in the world. God commands us to do the same thing. And it says, and one reason I know that is because here at the end, chapter 20, or verse 20, it says, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Right? The end of the age hasn't happened yet. Right? And Jesus is still with us to do this task. So that's an important thing to think through. And maybe you should be thinking through, who can I be sharing the gospel with? As we finish this book of Matthew, that would be a great application for you. So thanks for reading with us. Hopefully you're reading along the whole thing by yourself as you read after maybe watching this video or maybe before. I've been hearing mixed reviews. Some of you are listening to this first and then reading after. Others of you are reading first and listening to this after. But however you do it, I want you to make sure you're reading, because we just finished the first book of the New Testament. So thanks for reading with us today. We'll see you back tomorrow for another daily Bible reading snapshot.